Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something crucial, Chapter 3, from Spotting Alzheimer's Early, a caregiver's guide to taking control. It's titled, The Caregiver's Role in Early Detection. This chapter, well, it feels like a real turning point for anyone on this path. It's about shifting from just worrying to actually doing something effective. So our mission today is to pull out the most useful insights. We're going to look at it through 5 lenses: the core foundation, the emotional hook, the single biggest takeaway, the promise it makes for later chapters, and then, our own take on how well it works.
That sounds like a great plan. You know, what strikes me about Chapter 3 is how it changes the caregiver's mindset almost immediately. People often feel overwhelmed, right? Like they're just reacting.
Clearly lost, yeah.
Exactly. But Lee and Fiech, the authors, they step in and say, hold on. They reframe the role. You're not just a worried family member. You're becoming a proactive advocate. It's less about, oh no, what if I miss a sign? And more about, okay, here's how we gather the crucial information. It's practical.
Right, shifting from panic to process. So let's dig into that core foundation first. What's the absolute central idea they hammer home right at the start?
Well, the core is really positioning the caregiver. Often, they point out, it's an adult child, maybe in their 40s and 50s, juggling everything else as the primary observer, the first line of defense.
And why them specifically? Why not the doctor they see maybe once or twice a year?
It boils down to presence and context. You know, the doctor sees the person in a very sterile, artificial setting for maybe 15, 20 minutes. People tend to put on their best face then. They perform.
Right, the doctor visit persona.
Exactly. But the caregiver, they see the everyday stuff, the unfiltered moments. They're there when their parent struggles with something familiar, maybe something they used to do easily. It's those subtle shifts in daily functioning.
Can you give an example of that, something maybe a doctor wouldn't see?
Sure. Think about executive function. That's a big one here. It's not just memory, like forgetting a name. It's about planning, organizing tasks, maybe managing finances, or even following a recipe they've made 100 times.
Ah, okay, so things that require multiple steps or problem solving.
Precisely. Or maybe suddenly struggling with technology they use to handle fine, the remote control, the thermostat. Those aren't simple memory blips. They're complex processing issues you only really spot in that day-to-day context. The doctor doing a quick memory screen might totally miss that.
So the caregiver isn't just looking for forgotten keys. They're seeing maybe a bigger picture of how things are changing operationally.
That's a great way to put it. Operational independence. And Lee and Muvio say the caregiver's mission, because of this unique viewpoint, is very specific. Observe, document, and then act proactively. You're essentially gathering the detailed evidence.
So you're providing the context the doctor lacks, the snapshot versus the whole movie, as you said before we started recording.
Exactly that. The doctor gets that snapshot, maybe uses a screening tool like the MMSE or MoCA, but those often miss the very early, subtle stuff. The caregiver, though, with consistent documented observations, that's the full reel. It bridges that gap between a vague worry and something a doctor can actually work with.
But they're also really clear, aren't they, about what the caregiver isn't supposed to do?
Oh, absolutely. Critical distinction. They stress this repeatedly. Your role is advocate, not diagnostician.
Yeah.
This book is about empowering you with tools, not turning you into a neurologist via Google.
Right. Don't go down the symptom rabbit hole online.
Please don't. The goal is to collect high-quality information for the professionals, not to replace them. Think of yourself as, like, the chief data officer for your loved one's brain health journey. You gather the intel.
I like that reframe. Chief data officer feels empowered, less helpless.
Yeah.
But okay, the moment you decide to take on that role, I imagine the anxiety just spikes. How does Chapter 3 handle that immediate fear? Because that's very real for caregivers.
And they dive right into it. That's the hook. They don't start with the how-to of journaling. They start by acknowledging the core emotional driver, the fear of regret.
What if I missed something? Fear, the I should have acted sooner, guilt.
Exactly that. The chapter basically says, we hear you. That anxiety about missing the signs, about delaying things until it's much harder, it's completely understandable and frankly justified. They validate that feeling right away.
And the numbers they use really back that up, don't they? It makes the fear feel less personal and more like a reflection of reality.
They do. The statistics are stark. They cite figures showing around 7.2 million Americans aged 65 and older living with Alzheimer's dementia by 2025. That's huge.
7.2 million, that's staggering.
It really is. And it highlights that this isn't some rare fringe issue. Plus, they touch on the history how definitive diagnosis used to only happen post-mortem. We have better tools now, biomarkers and scans, but the book argues we still miss crucial early windows because those subtle, context-dependent signs get brushed off.
Brushed off by families or even by doctors sometime.
Both, potentially. And the consequence of that delay, it's not just about missing out on potential early drug benefits. It dramatically shrinks the time available for vital planning, legal, financial, care decisions.
So you end up making rushed choices in crisis mode later on.
Precisely.
Whoa.
Which just ramps up the caregiver stress exponentially. That initial worry, if not channeled, directly leads to much greater hardship down the road. The book connects those dots very clearly.
Okay, so they tap into that deep fear, that urgency. But fear can also freeze you. How do they pivot from validating the fear to actually getting the reader to do something?
It's quite clever, actually. They create this direct link. They say, essentially, acknowledging that fear, that potential for regret, is the necessary first step to doing something about it. The antidote to the paralysis isn't ignoring the fear, it's channeling it into a specific manageable action.
And that action is the documentation.
Exactly. They promise that the very act of structured observation and writing things down is the most immediate way to regain a sense of control. It takes the vague, overwhelming worry and gives it a focus.
Okay, so that leads us perfectly into the core tool, the big takeaway from this chapter.
Without a doubt, it's the Symptom Journal. If you remember one thing, it's this. It's the practical embodiment of the whole chapter's mission. It turns that I think mom is slipping feeling into objective data.
And it's not just jot some things down.
Yeah.
They have a specific method. What are the key parts?
Yeah, it's structured.
Yeah.
But before you even write, the first step is cultivating mindful observation. This is crucial. It's not about hovering or playing detective, waiting to pounce on every mistake.
Which must be so hard not to do.
It is. The instinct is to jump in, correct, help. But they advise tuning into daily routines without immediately correcting. The goal is to notice patterns over time while preserving dignity. If you always jump in, you might mask the actual level of difficulty.
So observe first, then maybe help if needed, but document the struggle itself.
Exactly. It's about gathering authentic data on their current ability. Focus on the pattern, not just isolated incidents. Then, once you observe something significant, the journal entry needs 3 key pieces of objective information.
Okay, what are those 3?
First, 1, the incident. Just the facts, what actually happened. Be specific and non-judgmental. Not dad had a senior moment, but maybe dad couldn't recall the name of his lifelong best friend during conversation.
Objective description. Got it. What's second?
Second, 2, the context. This is critical because, cognition isn't static. When and where did it happen? What were the conditions? Was it morning or evening? After good sleep or when tired? Quiet room or noisy restaurant, for example, happened at 10 a.m. at home, seemed well-rested, versus happened at 6 p.m. after a stressful family gathering.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Helps rule out other factors like fatigue. And the third element.
Third, 3, the impact. How did the person react to the incident? This tells you a lot. Did they show awareness, maybe laugh it off or get frustrated but acknowledge it? That suggests insight.
Or did they get defensive?
Exactly. Or deny it happened or blame someone else. That lack of insight can be a significant indicator, so became angry, accused me of hiding the keys, or seemed embarrassed but admitted forgetting. That reaction is really valuable data for the clinician.
And they use Lisa's story to show how this works in practice, right?
Yes, Lisa's story is a perfect illustration. Her father was still functioning pretty well overall, but she noticed him struggling specifically with driving directions, especially in unfamiliar areas or if there was a detour. Classic executive function challenge.
Instead of arguing about his driving, she just tracked it.
For 3 weeks. She logged the date, the route, where specifically he got confused, and crucially, his reaction, frustration, denial, etc. When she took those specific, dated notes to the neurologist.
It wasn't just, I'm worried about his driving.
Right. It was concrete evidence. The neurologist had real-world data showing a pattern of difficulty with navigation and planning. It wasn't just the dad saying, I'm fine, or 1 score on a test. It helped guide the specific cognitive tests they did next. It made the whole process more targeted and efficient. Lisa turned her worry into usable evidence.
That's incredibly powerful. But I can also hear caregivers thinking, another thing to add to my plate. Documenting everything sounds exhausting. Do they address that?
They do acknowledge documentation fatigue is real. Their advice is practical. Use easy tools, notes app on your phone, a small notebook in your purse or pocket. Keep it simple.
Not some massive, intimidating binder.
Exactly. Bullet points are fine as long as you capture those 3 core elements: incident, context, impact. It doesn't need to be an essay. And interestingly, they suggest the act of writing it down can actually be therapeutic for the caregiver too.
How so?
Well, when something worrying happens, you feel that spike of anxiety, maybe sadness or frustration. Taking a moment to step back and translate that feeling into objective data points creates a bit of psychological distance. It helps contain the emotion.
Turning it from a personal worry into a piece of data to be managed.
Precisely. And that connects directly to the little stress management tool they include.
Yes, the breathing exercise.
The 5-minute breathing exercise. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. They position it not just for general stress, but specifically for use during observation when you feel that urge to intervene, argue, or panic. It's a quick way to reset, stay calm, and maintain that objective observer role.
So it helps keep the journal entries factual, not clouded by your own immediate emotional reaction.
That's the idea. Ground yourself back into the advocate role.
Okay, so the journal is the core tool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier this chapter acts as a bridge to what comes next. How does it set up the following steps, talking to family, the loved one, the doctors? What's the promise here?
The promise is essentially that this groundwork, this journal, makes those incredibly difficult future steps manageable, even possible. It provides the foundation. The first big promise is enabling family alignment.
Dealing with siblings or other relatives who might not see it or might be in denial.
Exactly. Denial is often fueled by a lack of concrete evidence. If you just call your brother and say, "I'm worried about mom," he might brush it off, especially if he only sees her on her good days. But if you can share specific, dated examples from the journal,
It's harder to argue with facts.
much harder. It shifts the conversation. It validates your concerns, helps build consensus, and reduces that feeling of isolation for the primary caregiver. It prevents family conflict before you even approach the loved one or the doctor.
That alone sounds like a huge weight off the caregiver's shoulders.
It really is. So that's the first promise, unity through facts. The second promise flows from that. Preparation for sensitive talks, which is the focus of the next chapter, chapter 4.
The conversation about needing to see a doctor,
Mhm.
probably the one everyone dreads most.
Absolutely terrifying for many. The journal gives you the confidence and the material for that conversation. Instead of saying, "I think you're having memory problems," which can feel like an attack, you can say something gentler based on the journal.
Like what?
Maybe. I've noticed a few times recently, like last Tuesday when we went to the store, you seem to have trouble finding the car afterwards. I wrote it down here. I'm concerned, and I'd love for us to just get it checked out together for peace of mind. See? It's anchored in specific observations, framed as care and support, not accusation. The journal provides the factual backup.
That approach feels much less confrontational. Okay, and the third promise relates to the medical system itself.
Yes, navigating medical overwhelm, leading into Chapter 5. Doctor visits can be short, intimidating. The journal ensures you go in prepared. Chapter 3 explains you need to take your notes and synthesize them.
Not just dump the whole notebook on the doctor's desk.
Definitely not. Condense it into maybe the top 3 to 5 recurring most significant signs. Focus on the patterns, especially those executive function issues. Give them a concise one-page summary. This helps the doctor quickly grasp the key issues.
So you feel more confident, more in control during the appointment.
Absolutely. You've got your key data points ready. And the chapter also primes you to prepare specific, open-ended questions beforehand. Crucially, it helps you frame why you're coming to the appointment.
How should you frame that?
As support, not as oversight. Practice saying something like, "I know appointments can be a bit much, so I'd love to come along just to help take notes and keep track of everything the doctor says." It positions you as helpful, minimizing potential resistance from your loved one, while still ensuring you're there to share the journal insights if needed.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've walked through the core ideas, the tools, the promises. Let's step back for a critique. Did Chapter 3 actually succeed? Does it empower the caregiver like it sets out to?
I think it really does, yeah. Its strength is that blend of acknowledging the emotional reality, the fear, the anxiety, and then immediately offering a very concrete, structured plan. It takes that vague dread and turns it into manageable steps. Observe, journal, prepare. It shifts the caregiver's role in their own mind.
From passive worrier to active preparer.
Exactly. You feel less like something is happening to you and more like you have a way to engage with it constructively.
And the writing style helps, I think. It's
Yeah.
not just a dry manual.
No, not at all. It's compelling because it connects emotionally first. It validates the caregiver's experience before getting instructions. That makes you much more likely to actually do the journaling, which isn't easy. And the stories, like Lisa's, make the advice feel real and achievable.
So boiling it all down, the chapter's main success is.
I'd say it's successfully teaching the caregiver how to become that effective data gatherer.
Hmm.
It defines that as the most critical non-medical role they can play in early detection. It gives them a tangible skill set to combat the helplessness, turning that potential for future regret into proactive steps they can take now.
It reframes that scary initial feelings of noticing things into the first phase of building a case, essentially.
Yeah.
Preparing professionally.
You got it. It gives permission to stop the endless loop of worry and start managing the process.
Okay, great deep dive into this crucial chapter. Let's just quickly recap the 5 key points for everyone listening. First, the core foundation. The caregiver is the front line, the expert observer of daily life, acting as an advocate and data collector, not a diagnostician. Second, the hook. Tapping into that powerful fear of regret and delay, using it as motivation for action. Third, the takeaway. The Symptom Journal is key, recording incident context and impact turns worry into usable facts. Fourth, the promise. The journal builds the foundation for family agreement, gentler conversations with a loved one, and more productive doctor visits. And fifth, our critique. Big success here, it validates emotion while providing practical, empowering tools.
And maybe one final thought to leave folks with. That simple act of journaling, just a few minutes each day or whenever something occurs, it's not just about ticking boxes for the doctor. It's fundamentally about reclaiming a sense of agency in a situation that feels terrifyingly out of control. That consistent documentation. It's the seed for resilience, for planning, and for keeping your own balance on this long journey.
That idea of reclaiming control through small, consistent actions is so powerful. And Spotting Alzheimer's Early really builds on that. Remember, the authors continue this practical approach in later volumes, tackling things like day-to-day management and, really importantly, avoiding caregiver burnout. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope these insights are genuinely helpful. Maybe start thinking about that observation journal today. We'll catch you on the next deep dive exploring the caregiving path.